Hello and welcome back, or welcome to the channel. I'm Loudguns, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Mysk Expanse, the newest concept ship that promises to bring ship refining to the verse. As I mentioned before, I really prefer to wait for the Q&As before diving into new ships, but with that release today I feel it's the right time to look in a bit more detail at the Expanse. Just before we get going, if you're new and just watching these vids to see if SC is for you, if you do decide to create an account, just be sure to use someone's referral code for some extra starting cash. Mine's up on screen, but use a friend's if they already play. Just a reminder that while we're talking about a concept ship that's currently only available as pledge, all you need to play SC is a $45 game package, and I recommend that that's where everybody starts. Also, I'd recommend keeping your wallet in your pocket for a little while longer if you've waited until now, because the Invictus sale is just around the corner, and I bet there's going to be a free fly and a discounted starter pack or two on offer. Also, the Expanse, and Star Citizen more widely, is all about teamwork, so if you're looking for folks to play with, be sure to hop on over to the Frontier community. Our Discord link's just down in the video description. And we're also running a ship giveaway on the channel for a shiny Hull A this month, so stick around to the end of the video for details on how to enter. Okay, assuming you're not scrubbing through the timeline to find the giveaway, let's go. So first let's take a look at the ship itself and break it down for anyone who hasn't caught up on it yet. The Expanse is an entry-level refinery ship from Mysk. It's designed to be crewed and operated by a single player, but unlike most other profession starter ships, it's reliant on others to make its way in the verse. The Expanse itself doesn't have any way to gather raw materials, and instead will have to depend on mining ships and salvage ships to bring it the raw materials to refine. Expanse owners can either make their space cache as an independent operator, offering refining services to miners, buying ore directly from them to refine and sell on for a profit, or, my favourite one, by working as part of a mining org, where a group of players get together to cover more of the mining-refining loop. The Expanse is designed to take the saddlebags from a ship. Its ideal partner is the Mysk Prospector, but it's been confirmed that it'll also work with ships like the Mole as well, and suck the contents out with its Xi'an-inspired tractor beam. The onboard refinery then processes raw materials into a refined saleable material, which is distributed back into the saddlebag containers. The ship itself uses the same sort of saddlebags that we see on the Prospector. This time though there are 8 of them, each again with 8 SCU, so the ship can therefore have 64 SCU of cargo at one time. It also has an additional set of saddlebags which are compressed, ready to inflate if you were to jettison the first ones. So that's where there's a bit of confusion, where it's got sort of 64 SCU brackets 128, so it's 64 at one time. The refining process has been confirmed to be very hands-on, and this is a pretty good place to segue into the Q&A for a bit. I found that this response in the Q&A was really interesting, with CIG explaining that refining will have a number of interconnected processes requiring a lot of player involvement. Tractor beaming the Prospector's saddlebags, analysing the materials, and then either selecting a predefined refining method or taking a more manual approach. So I would imagine that the predefined methods may be similar to the existing refining processes available at station refineries. Currently, refining is a balance between 3 factors: time, cost, and yield. You can generally pick 2 factors in the positive column, and you have to accept 1 in the negative. You can have it quick and cheap, but you'll suffer on yield. You can have high yield and lower cost, but it's going to take ages. Ship refining introduces a 4th factor to the mix: active versus passive. So the station is your fully passive approach: arrive, dump, come back later. It would seem from this answer that you can now go all the way to the other end of the spectrum and go fully active, with lots of tweaks and manual inputs on your end. Or you can land somewhere in the middle and use a predefined method. If they get this right, then I'd imagine highly skilled refiners will be able to max the activity factor and improve yield, cost, or time, or maybe all of them, through their actions. So when it comes to what the Expanse can refine, we've got confirmation that it will refine minerals, gases, and metals, including scrap. This is one that I hadn't personally thought about, but it's confirmed elsewhere that the ship is also intended to work with the likes of the Drake Vulture on the salvaging side, rather than just being a pure play mining support vessel. I found the reference to the Greycat Rock a little weird, as gems don't get refined in the game currently, but I did feel there was a hidden gem, pun intended, with CIG referencing crafting, something they did a couple of times in the Q&A. And that hasn't been mentioned in a while. It was mentioned a while back, but it's just great to see that crafting's still intended. So ownership of the actual refinery itself may well bring your costs down, but nothing in life is free. There are no free dinners. There's always a cost to processes, be it by buying catalysts and reagents for use in the refining process, or by crafting them yourself. So some people will be saying, no, that's free, Loud, you crafted it yourself, but it's not. The materials you've gathered to craft your reagent or catalyst would ostensibly have value, so by using them in a craft and probably destroying them in the process of refining, you've sunk a cost. So CIG also mentioned that you would benefit from being unaffected by the occupation level at refinery stations, which they mentioned previously would cause prices to increase and times to extend. So definitely owning a refining ship is going to save you cash in absolute terms, but I'd just avoid saying that it's a free ride. So this question was asked regarding whether the Expanse has safe storage for Quantanium. And the issue, as any miner knows, is that once you scoop your quant up, you're against the clock. Tick-tock boom. So here in the answer, it's confirmed that you're not going to be able to use the Expanse to beat the system. If you move raw ore from a prospector to your Expanse but leave the raw ore in storage, there's no stabilization, and that timer is going to just continue to tick down until there's a very unhappy Expanse owner. However, once you start the refining process, that should stop the clock. This is good since without knowing how long refining might take, without this stabilization at the point the process is started, it could have been poor for refining Quantanium in the depths of space. So mining crews are just going to have to work together, just be careful not to logjam their poor refiners, because otherwise you're going to lead to explosive consequences. I know that some people didn't like this question, but honestly it was a good one and it got a particularly good answer, I thought. On Quantanium specifically though, I feel there are still some really important questions that we haven't had answered by CIG, and I think this does highlight a big problem with the Q&A system. We don't have a downvote option, so currently if you get in first and hammer out your question, it's more likely to get answered. But good questions might take a bit of time to think about and word correctly, so as to get the most out of the Q&A, which is ultimately the best info along with the sales docs that people have to make a buying decision. Downvoting would allow more of a chance for a really good, well-crafted question to rise to the top even if it was added a bit later. Having said all that, you folks might think mine is awful. But I want to ask CIG to give us more information on Quantanium, and specifically the journey it takes from Quantanium ore in a rock to quantum fuel in a ship. Currently the quant we mine is refined into a metal, so is this metal just one of the ingredients in quantum fuel? Similarly to how crude oil is put through a number of refining processes and becomes different products before you get to petrol. The Odyssey obviously caused a bit of a stir when it turned out that its refinery does a straight Quantanium ore to quantum fuel process. But if we're looking for in-law reasonings, I'd say it's to make it more efficient for its job as an explorer or save on space. But really I just figure it's game balance, CIG don't want an everything ship. So if you didn't already downvote my first question and I was allowed another, it'd probably be centered around tiers. So do CIG intend to bring in a tiering system for refining ships? And if so, what tier would they expect the Expanse to be? I think this is really important to avoid disappointment further down the line. So let's look at a cautionary tale. No, this time it's not you. Yes, you. So looking at med gameplay for a guide, we have Tier 1, which is currently just the stations, but in the future should include ships like the Apollo and the Endeavour. Tier 2 on the Carrack and Odyssey, and then Tier 3 on the poor Cutty Red, that back in 3.15 saw its ability to respawn players revoked. Now, this all makes total sense from a gameplay and game balance perspective. CIG want us to be making decisions and trade-offs. They want the larger, more effective, more specialised ships to be worth the credits. But I know that there were a few Cutty Red owners who were just none too pleased about that change. People considering whether or not to part with the cash should have this sort of info in my opinion. But you do have to go into it with your eyes wide open. The game is evolving, and just because something is a certain way or planned to be a certain way now doesn't mean it won't change as new things are introduced. The Expanse may have all of the refining ability to begin with, as the devs figure out exactly how the refining loop works, but it may, as the starter ship for the profession, then lose functionality as the loop becomes fleshed out and more ships are added above it. And more ships is something we'll undoubtedly see. CIG have a tendency to create small, medium, large and capital ships for each of the professions, sometimes with more than one option in a slot. So before parting with any cash, ask if the Expanse is going to be right for you and your mates first. So I put this together because I like a wee bit of theory crafting, as a potential org that the Expanse feels at home in. Obviously we'd need to actually get in-game and test it to see what ratios of like mining to refining to cargo ships will work perfectly, but this just is basically a symbolic sort of thing until we get that. A few prospectors doing the digging and rotating between rocks and the Expanse, which in turn can unload into something like a caterpillar. And I chose a cat because I just like the idea of having more tractor beams with moving these containers around. That can then take those goods off to market when it's full. I've also included a Vulcan to handle any workplace accidents and light refueling, but also to potentially resupply the prospectors and Expanse with spare saddlebags so that they can work for longer. You're also going to factor in a bit of pew-pew support to keep you safe. You could keep this in-house or outsource it to a security outfit. So I think this is more sort of your in-system, so if you look at a system like Stanton, this would be your small fleet which could head out from any one of the planets, hit up the Arran Halo, stay out there in the asteroid belt until it's time for everybody to go home. And this isn't to say that the Expanse has no home in a larger org, because larger orgs do run smaller scale operations, just a smaller group of players within that org going off to do some mining together. But in reality, one of the best things about larger orgs is benefiting from economies of scale. So you're probably going to be looking at the larger refining ships as they trickle out further down the line to help you scale up your operations. So personally, I won't be picking up an Expanse for myself, but I am really excited for the ship and the possibilities of refining gameplay. In particular, integrating refining into a mining op. And one of the most disappointing things for me at the moment is, there are only 4 refinery stations in Stanton. So forget about the whole mechanic where a pirate might have to go out and find my crew as we're doing some mining. They don't, they've just got to keep a scout on every one of the refining stations. And there are options you can take to sort of, you can vary your jump routes, you can be less predictable. But ultimately, if you're going to mine Quantanium and you're against the clock, you've got to make your way back to the refinery at some point. So refining ships and refining as a loop will allow us to be a lot harder to catch. So in the cat and mouse game of industrialists versus pirates, it's the next stage really. But one of the main reasons I'm holding off it for now is I am just going to be watching out for one of the larger variants since our org's grown a bit bigger. And also I'd imagine that the Expanse will be added as an Orion loaner, and I did slip up and buy one of those at IAE. That said, I do have an Expanse sat in my hangar, but maybe that's with an eye to May's giveaway. So I hope you found that interesting. I am absolutely not going to tell anyone what they should or shouldn't do with their money. You earned it, you spend it how you like. However, I feel that it doesn't hurt to sound a word of warning from time to time, particularly just to counterbalance a little bit of the FOMO that gets put around with concept sales. It's awesome that some people pledge purely holistically. They just want to see the game made and they're happy to give their money to CIG just to get it done. But the reality is that most players who pledge more than a starter pack are doing it because they're a bit time poor and they want to buy themselves a bit of progress. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But when it comes to concepts, just buyer beware. These things are bound to move around and we'll see nerfs and buffs over the years until release and probably beyond. But if you did find this video useful and you think I've earned it, then consider dropping a like and hitting the subscribe button if you haven't already. It never ceases to amaze me how much this channel has grown, and I greedily devoured a pizza this week to celebrate our more than 9,000 moment. So thank you all so much for that. With that in mind, giveaway time. As I've mentioned before, I really started this channel back in lockdown to really take my mind off not being able to go outside, and also to try and learn a new skill, so I wanted to learn video editing. But this whole thing's given me back way more than I ever could have expected. So with that in mind, I really want to give something back to the community. So from now on, basically, I'm running a monthly shipper giveaway. So for this month, April 2022, it's a Miss Hull. So when 317 eventually gets here, you'll get to get your hands on this if you're the lucky winner. just drop a comment down below, and each unique person to comment on a video, that will get you an entry. You can get multiple entries by commenting on every video from the month, but only one per will count. Don't let that stop us having a nice chat though. And with all that said, thank you very much for watching all the way to the end, and I look forward to seeing you next time.